GLBT, and I use GLBT intentionally because, having the L at the beginning is laughable because lesbians have never been in charge of anything or setting this agenda for, the GLBT movement.
But transgenders aren't in charge either.
Oh, I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why I disagree.
Okay, yeah, explain that to me.
Absolutely. So you have a movement, the transgender movement really coalesced in the early 90s. There was a meeting where folks met together, and I will say this to you, it's brilliant what these folks did. They set out, like, the Transgender Bill of Rights, here's what we want to achieve, and they set out to achieve it. These are very intelligent people who know what they're doing and have been able to push this agenda, which, from the early 90s to now, it's been remarkable, the speed with which we've seen gender identity legislation pass in the states and at the local level. But the cultural issue is such that you have lesbians who, we're women, like we are biological women. I'll say, we're females. People say, you're saying female, you sound like a Ferengi. We've been reduced to using the word female because we can't say we're women anymore because it's like, well, trans women are also women. So we have different concerns. We have different interests. Yeah. And we may want to only meet, for example, say, with other women. And our desire to have community with other women has been framed as a form of bigotry.
But aren't transgender women women?
No, well, this is the issue, right? So there are many lesbians, and I am one of them, who, being a good gay in the gay community and socialized gay, yeah, we were like, oh, trans women are women, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But there's this tension with wanting to have women-only space. And I'll tell you what changed my mind on I used to accept trans women as women.
I'm going to have to hear a definition of women-only space, too, but continue.
I was thinking that, too, Roseanne.
I'll give you a perfect example. So I was very
That means women-only space, it means women who aren't transgender.
It means if you were born female, you were born and at birth the doctor says it's a girl. That population. We'll go with that.
Well, what about hermaphrodites?
Well, let's say this about intersex people. If an intersex person is born and they're identified as a girl and many years later it turns out they have XY chromosomes, they're socialized female. They're in the female box. Okay. Like, there's not this thing that happens that they suddenly get kicked out. They also experience that female, girlhood. But here's the kicker, and here's what really changed the minds of a lot of lesbians over the last couple of years. You had, tension over women-only space. I'm a firm believer that women have the right to establish whatever boundary they want to establish. For example, you have women of color space. I would never go into women of color space. I would think that would be hugely disrespectful.
Roseanne would. Roseanne.
I'm going all over.
Exactly.
So you have, women have a right to establish a boundary and to meet with who they want to meet with. This is a fundamental premise of my organizing. But in 2012, this awareness dawned on me and a lot of other people, which is it's not enough for transgender women to be accepted as women. It became abundantly clear that many of these women also thought that they were female. And they were starting to frame lesbian sexuality as somehow bigoted towards them, which this is a problem for lesbians. I'm a lesbian. I came out in the late 80s. I've had, not many, but I've dated lots of, there's no way to say this. I've basically, I've dated women from 1989 till now, and I'm in a relationship with a woman, and women don't have the anatomy of males. So we now have.
But you know what? But you're kind of, aren't you kind of excluding? You're excluding like. I don't know. First of all, can we define what is woman-only space?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can look at different iterations of that.
It's
For
certainly
example,
not bathrooms. I know that because
just let me be very clear. Like, I thought we had switched from the legal aspects to the cultural aspects. So, one iteration of women-only space is as articulated by the Michigan Women's Music Festival, which talks about women born women. So girls who are born into our culture, identified as female, have a shared girlhood. You have other folks in talking about who's a woman, they'll say an adult human female is a woman. Women have shared characteristics, which, for example, women are vulnerable to impregnation, which doesn't mean all women are, obviously, but it means that only women are. That is, no males are ever vulnerable to impregnation. So there are different ways of articulating it. And let me also be very clear.
Well, you're talking about trans men because...
That's a very good point. And I want to also be very clear. I support folks establishing whatever boundary they want to establish. So if someone is like, I'm establishing women-only space, it means trans women are included. Great. Like, folks have the right to associate with who they want to associate with. And, trans men, I don't think would have any desire to go to like a women-only conference because they identify as men. So it's a moot point to be concerned with the fact that they're biologically female. And however, there are other instances where it's very important that you recognize they're biologically female, such as their access to abortion and birth control, because obviously they can also get pregnant if they have, intercourse with a man. A biological man. So these are the types of questions culturally that we've been wrestling with in the GLBT community, and it really hasn't impacted the broader community as a whole, which is why, lesbians have felt under siege for many, many years. If transgender women were trying to get into nunneries to be ordained, to become a nun, it would be like national news. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is you have transgender women who are targeting women's only space, women's only music festivals, women's only political conferences, and framing our desire for women only space as bigoted. And I have a huge political problem, and I think that it's wrong, and I think that it's disrespectful of people's boundaries.
Well, I can just see the fight. I can visualize the fight. Because
I can see that it's way bigger than it's being framed. And it's being framed in such a way as to divide and factionalize even further, where it could be framed in an inclusive way, and it could be framed as, expanding the rights of all women. It could be framed that way too, very easily. But, I don't even think we have enough time to go into this. It's just getting good. I wish we had another hour.
Well, we have a phone call. How do you guys feel like taking a phone call?
Well, how do you feel, Kathy?
That's fine with me.
Well, right. Okay, let's hope, they said they can stay on topic. So let's hope they stay on topic. Okay. So let's say Keon. Hi, Keon.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Good, how are you?
Good. I'm going to try to stay on topic. I was, when Roseanne brought up many good points about when she ran the different frustrations that there were, one other frustration that I'm looking at is the word radical. I wanted to know how you define it, because I know that there is a feeling that radical means the root. So the root of something. So like the root of the problem for feminism, for example, for women. And but if you were to broadcast that on CNN or Fox News, people would say, "Oh, extremist feminist." They're not very.
What is your question?
Educated.
I can't understand the point you're making. Are you asking a question or just making a point?
So the point that my question, and I want more expanding, is how has including the word radical been effective getting to the goal of radical feminism?
Okay,
And
thanks
if
for
not,
your call.
how could you go forward?
I don't know if that's answerable, but thank you for your question.
So Keon is basically saying, has attaching the word radical in front of feminism, has that been effective?
Oh, okay. Is that what he's saying?
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Kathy? Attaching radical in front of feminism, has that been effective, efficient, productive, positive?
So radical feminism, as the caller correctly notes, radical means root. So the root of women's oppression. I will, has it been effective? If you've ever been to an abortion clinic, you can thank a radical feminist because it's likely that radical feminists founded your abortion clinic. If you've ever been to a rape crisis shelter, a domestic violence shelter, those women are generally radical feminists from the second wave of feminism. So has it been effective? Yes, I think it has been. You could call it apple feminism. You could call it, cat feminism. The goals of it are real, are what matter, not so much the name of it. I will say one thing that's been very entertaining to experience from people. They get very offended, third wave, sex positive, liberal feminists. How dare you say you're radical? Because for them, radical means something very different. Radical means cool, awesome, edgy. And that's really, I'm like, okay, well, you're radical. That's nice. Good for you.
But why would you even have to put a word in front of feminism? Feminism to me is radical in and of itself. So why do you have to define it twice?
I'll tell you why. It's because radical is a term always used by the left, and it implies a Marxist analysis of economic structures. That's where it really comes from. And radical feminism is about the economic, a breakdown of the economic structure and substructure of women's rights under a capitalist economic system. That's really where it came from. But I don't understand why, I think it's off subject. So anyway, we did talk about it. We talked about the word radical. I'd like to get back on the subject of, because I think it is radical to say, I think the whole notion of women's space is where it seems to really be that people can't, communicate. They can't get over it. They can't see a solution. They're content to see it all the work for